Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our first of hopefully many soapbox sessions. My name is Ashley Laabs, and today I have Zovig Garboushian with me, the fabulous owner of Boldness, Ablaze Coaching. Zovig, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Zovig. Boldness Ablaze Coaching is executive coaching, speaking, and training. I birthed it because I wanted to focus on leveling the playing field in leadership for women. And over time have realized that there is a lot of work to be done in leadership. So while I have a particular passion and commitment to supporting women in leadership, I work with leaders who are just interested in understanding themselves more deeply and leading with more self-awareness and creating more inclusive environments, whether you're a man or a woman, however you might identify. I'm all about the leader. And I do that through training, and I do that through speaking and through one-on-one coaching.
Fabulous. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, these soapbox sessions are really all about leadership and getting in touch with how we can be authentic, how we can lead from a place of passion and excitement, and just giving ourselves kind of an informal forum to connect with each other about leadership and how we help the leaders in our networks and our lives on our client rosters. So I'm really glad to have you here, especially because I know that you have been working on some really exciting leadership development skills of your own.
Yeah.
You've been part of a public speaking program for quite a while now, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I've been in a 7-month long course with a group called Heroic Public Speaking. I will shout them from the mountaintops all day, every day. And it is really it's about learning how to be a high caliber professional speaker. So I've been speaking for years. My career as a marketer, I was constantly giving presentations and pitches and all of that. And then speaking has always been part of my role after I shifted over into professional and organizational development through training. So being in front of people is always something I've loved. And now it's part of my business. And so there comes a point where you realize, okay, I'm pretty good at this and I want to get really good at this. So I embarked on this journey with Heroic, and it started in January, and the whole first half was virtual. We learned how to write our speeches and all that goes into that. And now we're in the in person where we're learning how to rehearse and bring those words to life. And it has been more transformational than I could have expected. Like, it is not just a professional speaking education.
Mm.
It's like it's like I went to a retreat to like learn about myself and get connected with myself. It just happens to be in the forum of professional speaking. Like, it has required stuff of me that I haven't been required to do before, like to really come out of myself, to begin before I was ready, to fight for my ideas and commit to them,
Hmm.
and to speak them in and perform them into existence. So it's required me to be even more of me. Like, that's really what I've gotten from this, is like opening the door to just being more unleashed about how I express my ideas and invite people in to consider them.
Yeah, I think that's what's so exciting about that is hearing you talk about it as more of a personal retreat almost, that you're
Yeah.
engaging with yourself and your ideas. Um, and how you present yourself to the world, because that's so much of what we deal with our clients in our own work. And it's so rewarding to get to do that for yourself, to get to go inside of yourself and do the things for yourself that you do for others. I don't know about you, but I always find it so rewarding when we get to make time for something like that.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, I mean, I have been in some level of personal or professional development for the last 25 years. Like, I
Yeah.
am a constant learner because there
Hmm.
is always more to learn about yourself. There's never a there. Like, you don't get there with you. You learn things and discover things and resolve things, and then you take yourself to the next level, and that stuff comes back in a different way. And so you have to learn things and discover things and resolve things all over again. And so I'm always like, where can I learn, and who will be my teachers? And I'm always kind of in search of that. And this happened to be something that this experience became more and different than what I thought it would be. And I feel more more myself. Look, I was saying this just this morning in with someone else, that I am ever in pursuit of more ease in my life, like things feeling more easeful. And I think the ticket to that is to understand and know and accept yourself. And so
Do you
anything that, yeah,
do you think that um, being able to level up, like as a performer, helps you understand yourself and express yourself
absolutely.
easier? Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it requires I let go. And
Mm,
you're a writer. You create in the world, Ashley. Like you fight for your ideas. You put them down on paper, and it requires that you have to let go of some things in order to share those ideas. You got to let go of what people might think. You got to let go of the need for agreement. You got to let go of your fear of looking silly or being wrong or feeling foolish or whatever. Anytime we put anything of ourselves out there in the world, no matter the form, we have to let go of something. It requires something of us. It requires
mhm.
us to be a bigger version of ourselves that has the resilience and the commitment to what we're saying, right?
Yeah,
The
it's that
willingness.
commitment that is so hard for people. I think about this when I talk to my clients all the time, is that they know they have something to say. They know they've got this vision, they've got decades of expertise. They've got something different to say than what's going on in the industry, but they feel I think the word performative comes up a lot as a
Sure.
negative word.
Yeah.
And there's two sides of the coin to everything. And when you look at the other side of the coin, it's expression,
Yeah.
I think. And it's letting go of that performative um, stigma
Mm-hmm.
that you're putting on something
Hmm.
instead of letting yourself be who you are and just letting that flow out to your community.
Yeah.
And like that, I think that when people hold back and see it as something negative or performative, it's like there's this fear of being received.
Yes. Yes. Also, I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of performance.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything wrong with amping stuff up for the situation or the circumstance. I mean, when you write, you have to create a vision. You have to give it to people so that people can imagine it in their minds. When you speak, you're making them feel things. There's a performance to that. It's not something you do all the time, every day, in every circumstance. But like if you are trying to deliver an idea that you
Mhm.
want people to consider, that could possibly change how they do things, could change their business, could change their relationships. It needs some performative quality. It needs to have that level of uh I don't want to say drama because that's the wrong word and has a bad stigma to it, but
Sure.
it needs to be it needs that level of emphasis and
Yeah.
exuberance and enthusiasm.
There has to be some emotion behind it, and
Yes.
and that emotion has to connect with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious how your own journey with developing your voice and your expression of that voice, like
Mhm.
really amplifying the volume of how you express your ideas and the excitement with which you express your ideas. How does that translate into the work that you do with your clients, these women leaders who are trying to find their voice? Like, how do you work with them to create that same resonance and amplify it and
Yeah.
be stronger, more emotional, and connect with people?
I think there are several parts to that, but one of the most important pieces is that we get that the way that we are naturally, our natural level of energy, our natural level of expression, our natural way of expression is perfect. And it's counterintuitive to what many women have been told, at least that I was told, which is like, nope, too much, nope, too loud, nope, too that, too, all that.
Mhm.
And the more I go into the maximum level of me and how I want to express myself, the easier things get for me. I make decisions more quickly. I'm more resolute in my decisions. I have less self doubt. I am more able to be of service versus worrying about how I look because I'm not trying to perform. I am being more of me. And
Totally.
so we go through some work and discovery around like, okay, who are you naturally? All of my work is grounded in a concept called essence. And I did not create this. I worked with an amazing coach who created this body of work called Coaching from Essence. And the
Okay.
idea is that his name is Robert Ellis for anyone who's interested, but the conviction is that we all have a natural way of showing up in the world that adds value without having to try.
Mm.
You don't have to do anything. And it's different than your skills and your strengths and your title and your passions and the things you like to do. It's very different than that. Your essence is so natural, you don't even know that you are being it. And I think getting connected to that part of me has helped me become way more comfortable in who I am. And so I try to bring that to all of the work that I do. Like, actually, the way that you are without having to do a thing outside of your skills and your talents and all the things you've developed to cope and survive in this world, right?
Totally.
Is where your powerhouse is.
Well, I'm
And
going
if
to
we
ask you the
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I'm going to make you the example.
Okay.
I'm going to make you the example. I would love to learn about what leadership essence is through your own discovery of what it's been for you. Like, what have you learned about your own essence that
Yeah.
applies to the way you do your work?
Yeah. So I think, essence is discovering your essence is a bit of a journey, and it is not like, okay, I'm a this. There's no tool.
Of
It's
course.
not like a strengths finder thing where you're like, I'm a, or a disc assessment where you're like, I'm a D. It is, so far as I can tell, my essence includes elements of being a fire starter,
Mm,
being a truth seeker, and big heart connection. And everything I do, everything I've done in my life has had that part of me has shown up. Those parts of me that like truth seeking, like, why is this happening? What is this about? Where does it come from? I'm constantly peeling back layers of everything. It can be annoying sometimes. Fire starting is like, lighting little fires. Like, I provoke things. I'm a little provocative. I'm provocative with myself. I'm challenging and push my clients. And then the big heart connection. I genuinely want people to feel good about who they are, and I love that intimate connection that I can create in my work. And so if I am those things in every session I coach, in every training session, and I bring those qualities and that way of being to my speeches, the message lands in a different way. The message is more authentic. It's not performative. I might be performing, but I am not
sure.
performative,
Yeah. I mean, there's a big
right?
difference between those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the work that I do is to help always grounded in like, let's talk about your essence a little bit. Let's see if we can start the journey and open up the book that is your essence, because we get disconnected from that super early on because we're told we should be this way or that way and follow the rules. And we all go through many of the same experiences with school and, all of that. And
Absolutely.
so we can get disconnected from that natural part of us that is dying to come out, but has no place. Like, where does a fire starter go? How do I put that on my resume? How do I, you know, how do I express that in a job interview? It's like, you
Right.
don't have to. You don't have to say I'm that. You can just be that and allow it to come out.
Yeah,
And
people don't always recognize like what that quality is. They may not use the same word, but they feel it, right?
right.
It's something that is directly communicated with the people who experience you being authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to. And look, if your essence doesn't fit, that might not be the place where you need to be. I mean, my essence didn't fit in a lot of places. And not everybody wants a fire starter. Not everybody wants someone to be like, so why are we doing this?
I can tell you as somebody who also asks those kinds of questions that yeah, a lot of people do not love that.
That's fine. That's fine. If my essence doesn't belong in a certain place, that's okay. But if we are trying to pretzel ourselves into being something we're not, things get harder and leadership becomes harder. Like, leading when we're not ourselves invites in self-doubt, lack of clarity. We get cluttered with what everybody else thinks or wanting people to like us, right? Like making choices and decisions because we want to be liked
It's
versus
very
being
tempting.
right? It's all very tempting, and we're all human. We do this stuff, but like the more aware you are of yourself, the more access you have to change the things that aren't working for you. And wanting to be liked all the time as a leader doesn't always work. In fact, I don't know how often it does work. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me how I think that, when most people who hear this, they will agree with you. I think they will agree with you, and it feels like something that's very easy to agree with. But then when you get in the day to day
Yeah.
of being a leader, it can really feel like there is a template for that.
Yes.
There is a right and a wrong way to do that, and you have to fit yourself into the mold of leader, and you have to create a persona of
Yeah.
yourself that fits within this mold,
Hmm.
and that you have to shed pieces of yourself along the way to fulfill your potential as this leader who has an impact on a larger group of people. It's like
Yeah.
if you want to reach more people, if you want to have a bigger impact, you have to be less in a way.
Yeah.
You have to be less of yourself. You have to be
Yeah.
less human. You
Yeah.
need to be this machine of leadership.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is what's so wonderful about the work you do, and the work that I feel privileged to do as well is connecting with leaders and giving them permission to be themselves. Like it's wild to me. I think that a lot of the leaders I've come into contact with, they have really big personalities.
Hmm.
They have huge personalities. But when we talk about actually exercising their personality in their leadership or in their um in kind of the public persona that they are creating, making that true
Yeah.
with who they actually are and what their big personality is like,
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable for them.
Yeah. It can be. And I think there's a balance. I don't think we should be walking around being reckless and like being all everything all at once. There are audiences and there are environments where certain things will land and will work and other things will not. So I can't go into new client situations lighting fires. Like we have to be discerning about who we are and how we show up, but knowing that you have such a thing as essence,
Yeah,
knowing that when push comes to shove, when you need to make a hard choice, you can use that as your calibrator. You can recognize that if something isn't working, it might be because something is out of alignment with your values or your essence. Like those are all just awarenesses to have. And so
absolutely.
so I think we can work to serve the audiences and environments that we're in by bringing different parts of ourselves out. But I don't think we need to pretend to be something we're not ever.
Mhm.
If you are going into a room that is sort of conservative and has a certain, culture, maybe the big personality right away before they know you, maybe so you won't work. So you dial it down for that purpose because you know you'll be more effective. But then you can turn it up later on when the trust is built. So when we know ourselves more, we can be more discerning about how we show up and where we show up. But we
Yeah,
shouldn't be, I don't think, I'm going to put a should on it, shouldn't be pretending to be something we're not because that works against us.
absolutely. And I think it's really interesting using the analogy of like the knob, the volume knob,
Yeah.
right? It's not about withholding, it's not about being something that you're not. It's about being who you are and knowing when to turn the volume up and down,
Hmm.
um, and when it's okay to shift,
Yeah.
right? I think that's a really powerful analogy because it gives people permission to always be themselves,
Yeah.
and to think differently about how they adapt to situations that aren't necessarily their natural environment.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful. The
Yeah.
other thing I'm curious about your take on is listening,
Hmm.
because I think that there's always the danger of too much of a good thing. And we taught both of us work in giving people voice and helping people say more and be themselves and lead out loud.
Yeah.
And how do we reconcile that? How do we listen like ourselves? Do you think that there's personality in the way that we listen and the way that we receive information?
What a question. How do we listen like ourselves? Well, okay, so I've never been asked that question before. So I'm a verbal processor. So let me talk this out for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So using myself as an example, if the truth seeker part of me that's that part of my essence that I feel really proud of and feel very congruent with. If the truth seeker is the one that is listening, then I'm listening for what's not being said or how things are being said or the words that are chosen when they say them or whether there are beliefs that are coming out or there are values that I'm hearing. So I'm listening for truth.
Mm,
If the fire starter part of me is listening, I'm listening for a place that the person or the situation might need a little bit of prodding to move, to go
yeah,
forward. If the connective part of me is listening, the big heart connector is listening, I might be listening for a place where a person feels like they're not feeling seen and heard. They might need support. They might just need to be validated in something.
yeah.
So I think, again, so much as I can have understood my essence, because it is a little mysterious, if I were to turn on those parts of myself in my listening, I think that's what it might look like. But I think all of that listening, no matter how I'm doing it, requires me to be present
Mhm.
and to take myself out of the conversation, to be a one-way receiving machine versus me in my head going, well, does it mean this? You know what I mean? Like I can have
Totally.
hunches and I can note things and be like, ask about that, put a pin in that, but not putting any story around it.
That's a hard thing to do.
Oh God, because we're story making machines. That's all we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Ashley has red hair, so it must mean this. Right? Like we are story and meaning making machines.
Yeah, I love your description of how the different components of your leadership essence might lead you to listen differently. I think
Hmm.
it's a really excellent way of thinking about it and acknowledging that there are so many ways to listen. Um, I come from a musical background in addition to many other things, but they talk a lot about how the rests are as much a part of the music as any note, any rhythm, anything that you hear. The silence is just as important as the sound.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot more in the way that I show up for clients, in the way that the leaders that I work with are showing up in
Hmm.
their communities online. And it's that silence, it's the listening, it's the receiving,
Hmm.
that is also such a big part of how they're seen.
Yeah.
Because we all know leaders who are hard to tell things because they're not listening,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to have
Yeah.
those conversations because they're like, as a leader, I think you have to have judgment. You have to be a good decision maker. You're a
Yep.
problem solver. But when we over exercise those muscles in moments when we should be listening, it actually works against us as leaders.
Hmm.
And so we also remember those leaders who are really excellent listeners
Hmm.
and feel like they're actually receiving our message and responding to it rather than you know, proactively trying to solve the problem before they've
Yeah.
heard all the information. And so I just love your analysis of how your personality can come through in listening. And
Hmm.
I've literally never thought about this until I asked you the question.
It's a great
So
question.
I think that you just on the fly really dug in there, and just to um return the courtesy and think about this myself. I
Yeah.
think I'm a strategist.
Hmm.
And so when I'm listening, I'm often listening for patterns.
Wow.
And it can be word choice, it can be, body language. Um, it can be if I'm hearing kind of the same questions or something like that. Like I will notice what's important from the pattern more so than even just the single thing that they're trying to talk about or being asked. It's just like over the period of a conversation or several conversations. What am I hearing? What's the pattern in that? Because I think a lot of the time we think we know what the problem is and try to offer a solution.
Hmm.
But if we're wrong about the problem, we're wrong about the solution.
Mhm.
And I think that anyone, you know, at our level of career has had the experience of someone coming to them with a solution that they just like, I want you to do this. Right. And you have to actually listen and find the problem underneath, find the patterns, find what's going on underneath, and make sure that what they want from you and what they expect from you is actually the thing that's going to have an impact for them.
Yeah.
So I think that comes into play a lot about how I listen.
Mhm. Yeah. And if you're not listening and you're just proactively offering a solution, you're making up stories about what you think the problem is. And sometimes people don't
Mm,
always need a solution to every single thing they bring to you. I mean, as a
it's true.
leader, people are bringing a lot of stuff to you. And sometimes they just need you to listen and then they figure it out themselves. I mean,
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times I went to a manager or a leader, and I was like, here's the thing, da, 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 da. And then I'm a verbal processor. So I would talk for 2 or 3 minutes and I'm like, I got it. And I figured it out. Right. And all it required was them holding space for me
Yeah, absolutely.
so that I could just holding that space for me so that I had a place to let something out and to process it and create my own solution. But I love how you describe yourself as I have to go back to the silence thing.
Mhm.
Ashley, that was
Yeah,
really profound. The rests in the music. Um, Silence is a really powerful tool.
absolutely. Say more about
You
that.
know? Yeah, so, when I if I well, so for me, I learned very early on with my very first therapist, he would just hold silence. He wouldn't ask me a single question. If I sat down and didn't have something immediate to say, we would just be silent. He wouldn't ask me anything. It would just be silent. And he explained to me at like 22 that silence can speak a lot louder and that sometimes people need to just rest. And eventually something will come out. And the rest that you give people, if I ask you a question, I'm going to give you a minute to process the question
Yeah,
because because sometimes we just don't have immediate answers all the time. We're so used to being in this instant gratification, have to have an answer right away. I got to speak up the first in the meeting, or I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to reply and
totally.
respond to the email right away, or they're going to think I'm off my game. We forget that like the moments of pause, the moments of rest allow us to gather ourselves and allow us to connect with what we believe to be true, how we actually want to do something, what our values are in this situation, how I want to respond, what kind of feeling I want to create, and giving someone that luxury of space and quiet
That
is
is such a luxury.
it is a luxury to have quiet. When someone goes, oh, that's a good question. I'm like, oh, here we go. This
Yeah,
will be
oh, I
good.
get so excited. When you told me the question about listening was a good question, I was like, "Oh man, we're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
We're gonna get
Yeah.
somewhere here."
Yeah. Or when someone like you ask them a question and they're like, and they take this deep breath, they're thinking.
Yeah.
Like I learned through my speaking course, like the size of the breath will tell you the size of the thought.
I love that.
Oh, it was brilliant. And then they demonstrated it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. Like if I asked you what's your favorite color, what's your favorite color?
Green.
Green, easy peasy, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
require much thought. If I were to ask you something like what is your definition at 55 years old of success and fulfillment?
I mean, I'm gonna need a 20-year pause and I'll let you
Right,
know.
right. So people will often do this, or they'll take a deep breath in. Ugh. They'll do that, and the
Yeah,
size of the breath tells you the size of the thought.
I
And
love
so
that.
watching for those kinds of things in conversations, if someone takes a deep breath or lets out a big sigh, something's coming. So keep your mouth shut.
But here's what that also makes me think of is when people should take a breath and they don't.
And they don't.
And they don't. I mean, I've been this person before.
Yeah.
I can get, excited about something or have a really strong opinion about something and just be like locked and loaded, you know? Um, and
What do
there
you
are
think that is?
sorry, what's that?
What do you think that is? What do you think that's about?
Oh,
For
I
you or
think,
anybody? Like,
you know, so many things,
Mhm.
but boy, here now I'm taking the breath.
Mhm.
Or maybe holding my breath a little bit. I think it's about vulnerability.
Mhm.
I think that often when you are in a leadership position and, you know, to categorize it as dissent would be extreme, but when there's
Mhm.
disagreement, when there's uncertainty, when there's ambiguity, um, it's very tempting to assert your confidence and your strength and not leave space for that vulnerability or
Mhm.
uncertainty, um, and not acknowledge it as part of bringing people with you. You think if you can I think if I can project enough confidence and knowledge and experience, to say, "This is really the way to go,"
Mm.
um, that people will feel confident and come with me.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's really about leaving space for that uncertainty
Mhm.
and acknowledging it and taking that deep breath and hearing what they're saying and receiving it. Um, and that's something that I strive to be better at all the time, just as a total type A who tries to eliminate all uncertainty from my life. I try to not make that the big bad meanie guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think vulnerability is a great response. I mean, I can only speak from my experience. Like if I was filling space or jumping to something, it was absolutely vulnerability, or it would be fear that I would look a certain way if I didn't know the answer, fear of what people might think if I gave them the time to think too much, fear of who knows? I mean, just like we live in these little tiny fears that, many of us can break through and sort of override all
Mhm.
day long, right? But like in space of quiet and sitting without the phone, without something to distract us, it can feel uncomfortable. I've been to a metric tons worth of leadership trainings in my life, right?
I
But
believe it.
yeah, but and there was value in all of them. But the thing that was always missing for me was that there was so much about what to do and how to do it, but there was nothing about who I was being and who I was
Mm.
in relation to my leadership. Because we relate to our leadership. We relate to it like, I have to be this certain way. I became a leader young, and so I have to be a certain way. I became a leader much later in life, and so it has to look a certain way. We have relationships and stories with our role and identity as a leader. But very rarely are we asked, like, so who do you want to be in your leadership?
Mhm. Yeah.
I was never asked that. And I don't know yet and if you have been asked this, please come forward and tell me, because it's a brilliant question. But to be asked, who do you want to be as a leader it's a deep ass question. And that, I think, was the piece that was always missing for me, was about who I was being and
Yeah.
understanding myself within the context of being a leader, a manager, even a project lead that people would come to for answers or to keep the train on the tracks.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to wait to answer that question until you are in a very senior position of
Mm-mm.
leadership. I mean,
No.
people who want to step into that place in their lives, that's something they have to figure out. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how you stay on the path. That's how you find the authentic path of
Yeah.
leadership for you that doesn't require you to sacrifice who you are, is to know who you are and stand in
Yeah.
that along the path.
It's the program. We talk about all the issues and challenges that are relevant for leaders today, especially for women leaders, using our voice, dealing with conflict, challenge, and change, understanding our leadership and creating our leadership vision, discovering your leadership essence and your unique leadership essence. So your relationship with money. So we're dealing with real live things,
Mm,
all through the lens of who are you in relation to that? What can you discover about yourself to make those situations feel more easeful, not easier, because stuff is hard.
Of course.
And we have challenge and all kinds of things come at us as leaders that we couldn't have made up, right? You couldn't have paid me to make up that story.
That's so
But
true.
you can't, I believe that there is more opportunity for ease and to feel resolute in your leadership if you understand yourself first. And so that's the lens that we use. And that's the piece that was always missing for me. So that's why I created it. And it is a combination of many different disciplines and trainings and learnings that I have done over the last couple of decades brought together. Because my belief, Ashley, is that there's no one way to do it, right? So good teachers give you ideas. You get to try them on. You get to see what fits. You take what works for you and you leave the rest behind.
Love that.
So I feel like I'm going to give ideas. I'm going to give you models and frameworks and ideas, and you try it on, see how it feels, test it out in the field, and then adapt, refine, and modify as it fits you.
I love
And
that.
I feel like when we have the freedom to do that, and we're not just like something's being put on us,
Mm-hmm.
like now you're a leader and you must behave this way.
Yeah, here's the template.
Here's the template. When you're out of template, you can be, I think we can be more effective because we're being more ourselves.
Yeah, we're being more human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Well, where can people go to learn more about your immersive?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. So it's boldnessablazecoaching.com/leadership essence.
Amazing.
You can also email me at zovig@boldnessablaze.com. In person. We're doing it in person in Seattle in a beautiful space. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited for it.
I'm really excited for you too.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This was a wonderful conversation. I know I'm going to be thinking about it for the rest of the week.
It was
And
great.
if you're not already following Zovig on LinkedIn, you should follow her there too. That's how we met.
Yeah,
And I'm so grateful to know you, Zovig. I really
me
appreciate
too.
you.
Me too. And I